Good evening. This is Rabbi Brovender Parsha Shiur of the WebYeshiva. We're up to the Parsha of Baha'alotcha, an interesting Parsha. But let me take you back to the beginning, to the commentary of the Ramban, introducing the book of Bamidbar. We know that there are 5 books in the Torah. We don't know exactly why HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to give us 5 books instead of 1 book. But we understand that some of the commentaries, the earlier commentaries, like the Ramban, decided that there must be some way of finding meaning in this idea of books. And so the Ramban is the one who taught us that the book of Bereshit in its entirety, not just the first 2 chapters, but the entire book of Bereshit is called Yitzirah, is creation. And that includes the creation of the people who would then be responsible to bring the Torah ideas into the world. The second book of the Torah is called Geula, according to the Ramban, redemption, that the act of creating a people that is worthy of receiving the Torah is called Geula. That's the redemption from the shackles of reality. The people who are going to be able to have a meaning or present meaning to the world that doesn't exist or didn't exist before they came upon that world. That second book of the Torah, the book of Shemot, which is the book of Geula, also the second half of that book is the book of the Mishkan. So Geula ends with the idea of a location, of a place that is indisputably unique. And that's part of the process of Geula as represented in the book of Shemot. The book of Vayikra contains the implications of building the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Book of Vayikra is not entirely 100%, but pretty much a book that teaches about Kedusha, about Tahara, Tumah, Tahara, when you are allowed to go to the Beit HaMikdash, when you're not allowed to go. That's all in the book of Vayikra. And therefore, the book of Vayikra can be understood as being the subdivision of Shemot. Shemot is Geula, and Geula includes the Mishkan. And the Mishkan necessitates teaching B'nai Yisrael about Tumah v'Tahara, uncleanliness, cleanliness, korbanot, sacrifices. All that is the legitimate and necessary indicators for the Mishkan. Now we get to the book of Bamidbar, there has a bit of a problem. And so to clarify the Ramban's position about Bamidbar, we're going to go through it again. Ramban, Hakdama, Bamidbar. Achrei shebi'er Torah hakorbanot, B'sefer Shlishi, after the Torah teaches us about korbanot in the 3rd book of Vayikra, התחיל עתה לסדר בספר הזה המצוות שנצטוו בעניין Oel Moed, the mitzvot. In other words, the mitzvah in this case means the proper way to make the Oel Moed, Ukvar, the tent of the meeting. Ukvar is here al Tumat Mikdash. We already know about the fact that you can't just enter the Mikdash, the sanctity, the sacred place, whenever you want, to Kedoshav, Lidorot. Vata yagbil et hamishkan biyoto bamidbar kasher higbil har Sinai. Now, the Torah is going to tell us that there are certain limits that we have going into the Beit, to the Mishkan, just as there were limits on Har Sinai, and this is the Ramban's position in several places, that the Mishkan was in some way an imitation of Har Sinai, that Har Sinai is not history, but Har Sinai is ever present in the Mishkan. Biyot HaKavod Sham Tziva B'Chazar HaKodesh B'Chazar HaKarev Yumat. It's called Chazar HaKarev Yumat, I'm sorry. Kasher Amar Sham Kisakol Yisakel. It was just like in Har Sinai, if you went beyond the limit, Sakol Yisakel, you'll be stoned. Similarly, here in Dvarim, it says Zara Karev Yumat, and in Vayikra, B'tziva, V'lo Yavo L'rot Kivalat HaKodesh, and there's also a mitzvah when the Leviim come to cover up the Kodesh, the sacred items that have to be moved from one place to another. Umeitu Kasher is here, Sham, Pen Yersu El Hashem Lir'ot, lest they run up that dividing line to see what's going on. V'tziva. So that's the first thing. There are things that are left over, and from Vayikra, and you find them in Bamidbar. V'tziva ushmartem et mishmeret hakodesh ve'et mishmerot hamizbeach kasher amar sham. And also something else, finishing up the Kedusha of the Mizbeach, V'gam HaKohanim HaNigashim El Hashem Yitkadashu V'gomer. V'Kohanim V'Ha'am V'gomer. There are things about the limits that we have to live with, and Kasher Amar Sham, V'gam HaKohanim HaNigashim El Hashem Yitkadashu V'gomer, V'Kohanim V'Ha'am V'gomer, V'hinei Tziva Ech Tiyeh Mishmeret HaMishkan, and also those who watch over the Mishkan are mentioned here in the book of Bamidbar, V'chelav, and they have to take care of the vessels of the Mishkan. Ve'ech yechanu saviv, and how will they encamp when they come to a camping place in the desert? How will they camp? Where will each of the tribes be? Vayamod ha'am v'chu me'rachok והכהנים הניגשים אל השם, איך ינהגו בו בחנות ובשאת אותו. When you carry it, when you are camping, it's carrying it. ומה יעשו במishmarot בזבראתו, והכל מעלה למקדש. וכבוד לו כמה שאמרו, אינו דומה פלטרין של מלך, שיש לו שומרים לפלטרין שאין לו שומרים. So all of this has to do with the idea that the armon, that the castle of the king, is honored by those people who watch over it, who are watching it. So the same thing is true about the Mishkan. The Mishkan is honored by the fact that there is shmirah, there are people who watch over that place all the time. V'sefer hazot kula b'mitzvot sha'ah shenitztavu bahem be'amdam b'midbar ובניסים הנעשים להם לספר כל מעשה השם אשר עשה עמהם. And so this line is an important line. והספר הזה, הספר הזה כולה במצוות שעה. In other words, there are really not many mitzvot in the book of Bamidbar, but it's largely to do with the mitzvot that are connected to the Mishkan, the leftover mitzvot. So that according to the Ramban, Bamidbar doesn't really have an identity. Bamidbar is very much the leftover mitzvot. And this idea that there are mitzvot that have to do with the Mishkan, but are not going to be repeated because the Mishkan is going to end its career when the Jews go into Eretz Canaan, more or less, right? So the Ramban is sort of like saying he's defeated. He can't figure out a reason for Bamidbar to be independent. Nisim nasim lahem l'saper kol ma'aseh she'aseh imahem. That's an interesting idea that all you have left were the miracles that took place in the desert. We're there in the 38 years in the desert, and that's what the book of Bamidbar is about. So it's not clear. בניסים הנעשים להם לספר כל מעשי השם אשר עשה עמהם להפליא בספר סיפר כי החל לתת אויביהם לפניהם וסיפר. And finally, at the end of the book of Bamidbar, we hear stories of the victories, the physical military victories of Bnei Yisrael over their enemies, לפניהם לחרב וציווה איך תחלק הארץ. And then there's a command, or there was a determination of how Eretz Canaan will be divided up amongst the tribes, and that's what Moshe Rabbeinu starts to do at the end of this sefer, the sefer of Bamidbar. Ve'ech b'sefer hazeh mitzvat nohagot lidorot, ve'ein b'sefer hazeh, ein. There are no mitzvot hanohagot lidorot, which is what we call mitzvot. Zulati k'tzat mitzvot b'inyanei hakorbanot, except for a few times where the various korbanot are mentioned, התחיל בהם בספר הכהנים, which was begun. The story of these korbanot was begun in the book of Kohanim, which is Vayikra, V'lo nishlam beuran sham, and it's not complete. V'hashliman b'sefer hazeh. So it would seem that the Ramban sees the book of Bamidbar as being a continuation of the book of Vayikra. And it contains information about the Mishkan, about how to build it, and about how the people should be camped as they move from place to place. In other words, somehow the book of Bamidbar, if the Ramban looks at it and tries to find an independent rationale for the book of Bamidbar to exist, he's having difficulty with that. And he says clearly there are no mitzvot in the book of Bamidbar. Mitzvot meaning mitzvot forever. No mitzvot forever. What there are tzivuyim. There are commands that Moshe Rabbeinu received and relate to the people. For commands for the Kohanim in the desert, for the Leviyim in the desert, for the people camping in the desert, how they should approach a connection to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle. All of that is there, but there are no mitzvot that we do today that are based on the book of Bamidbar. And that's interesting. That's interesting. And I would say that the Ramban, based on Veshit, Shemot, and Vayikra, is kind of defeated with the book of Bamidbar. That he would have wanted to find an independent rationale for the book of Bamidbar's existence, but really was not able to find that. But he hasn't told us, the Ramban has not told us the full story, which we will take a look at, I think. Starting in our parasha, in Baha'alotcha, and Perek Yud Aleph. I would just like to remind us of the psukim and what the Torah says, which the Ramban did not mention. The book of Bamidbar is also the book of Vayihi Ha'am Kemitonenim. That somehow the people started complaining. And the question is, why were they complaining? Rabba Znei Hashem. Vayishma Hashem Vayichar Apo Vativ Bam, and God related or reacted and was angry. Vativ Bam Eish. Eish Hashem Vatochal B'Ktzei HaMachaneh. B'Ktzei HaMachaneh. V'yam ki bitonenim. Bitonenim is a word that we don't understand. I mean, they complained. What do you mean they complained? They were a revolution. The word bitonenim is a little hard for us to understand. The next pasuk says, Vayitzak ha'am el Moshe. Vayitzak ha'ashem vayitpalel Moshe el Hashem vatishka ha'esh. Okay, so Moshe Rabbeinu prayed, Vatishka ha'esh. Vayihi ha'am k'mitonenim is what we have to understand. Vayihi ha'am k'mitonenim means something else. Because the result of the salvation that Moshe Rabbeinu brought them was Vayitzak ha'am el Moshe. Vayitpalel Moshe el Hashem. Vatishka. And Moshe Rabbeinu davened, Vatishka ha'esh, and the fire diminished. Vayikra, ha'makom hahu taveira ki bara bam esh. It was called by a name that connected them to the esh. V'sabsuf. Sabsuf are you people who are usually unable to make themselves heard. Asher b'kirvam hitavhu, vayashuv vayku b'nei Yisrael vayamru, mi yachilenu basar. What do you mean yichalenu basar? They're eating man, aren't they? And isn't the man have the taste of whatever you're eating? Doesn't it have other advantages? So I have an idea. You know, the Jewish people are asked to believe, to accept the fact that the promise that that Hashem made to Abraham Avinu, that they will be great in numbers and inherit the land of Canaan. But there was this problem that they had, because all of the things that God promised them and all the things that they received and all the goodness they received, it was all done with miracles. And miracles, ideologically, miracles are not dependable, because we are going to learn in the book of Bamidbar that there are miracles who are not good people. There are miracles who seem to be in control of divine forces that we can't depend on. The Egyptians taught us that miracles are not dependable. Every time a miracle was brought on the Egyptians, they overcame it until there was nothing left of them. So I would say that the book of Bamidbar also represents the struggle that Bnei Israel had about miracles and promises. They lived the world of miracles, and the world of miracles is not dependable. We learned that also in the book of Shemot. Moshe Rabbeinu throws down the staff turns into a snake. Paro says to his magicians, "Can you do that?" And they do somehow. They do that. So Paro goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, you did it and we did it. Why should I listen to your power and not accept my own power? Even including Makat Bechorot, the destruction of all the firstborn children in Egypt, did not convince the Mitzrim that they had lost their power. And they gathered together their chariots, their weapons, and they came chasing after Bnei Israel as they left Mitzrayim. As they left Egypt to go into the desert on the way to Eretz Canaan. Where did they get that strength from? They understood miracles in that way. It wasn't a perfect solution to the religious question, is God dependable? Will it happen because it was said that it would happen? And from that time on, there was a constant, never-ending question. And that never-ending question included questioning Moshe Rabbeinu. Yitro taught Moshe Rabbeinu that he can't be the only one who makes the determinations. And Moshe Rabbeinu said to Yitro, but that's what they want. They want my answer to their questions, because my answer is heavenly. So Yitro said, if you stay as the only one who brings the answers to the questions, the future of the Jewish people is done. And so what the Jews are saying here in chapter 11, Vayam kimitonenim, as though they had something to complain about. They have nothing to complain about, but what they said was, how do we know that the man will come or there'll be something to eat tomorrow? What will happen when Moshe Rabbeinu leaves us? What will happen when we're no longer able to depend on the miraculous intercession of heaven in our basic needs? What could they have said to God that was Ra? And what they said was, if we are depending on miracles, how do we know? How do we know about the miracles? How do we know that they continue? How do we know we have water and meat? Vayomru miyachilenu basar. There it is, miyachilenu basar. Zacharnu et hadaga. You know, Mitzrayim, we didn't eat miraculously. There was no man. The kishurim ve'et avatichim ve'et achatzi ve'et abatzal. You know, it was a different kind of food, certainly. Et abitzalim ve'et shumim v'ata nafshenu pasuk vav. Nafshenu yevesha, our souls are dried out. Ein kol bilti el haman einenu, and all we have left is Naman. Well, what's wrong with that? No, what's wrong with that is that it's going to come to an end. We understand, as the Nitziv, for example, taught us last week, we understand that there's the way we are living in a miraculous world. What will happen to us when the miracles disappear? When Moshe Rabbeinu disappears? When the world we're living in so wonderfully, when that world disappears, how will we be able to live up to our obligations? How are we sure that we're going to be able to, that we will become victorious in the battles that we have to fight? So that the book of Bamidbar is the Nitziv, and this is what we said last week. The Nitziv taught us that there's a change in Bamidbar, from the world of the miracles to the world of no miracles, no special miracles. Everything is a miracle, but not like man and the well of Miriam, not like those miracles. So Vayhiam Kimitonenim means, what's going to be with us? What's going to be with us? We want regular food. We want to be able to prove to ourselves that we'll have the food when we go into Eretz Canaan, when the time of the punishment of the 38 years in the desert disappears. A second notion which is connected to that, or which exists in the book of Bamidbar, is this idea that the people want to get rid of Moshe Rabbeinu. Hukas, Balak, they revolt against Moshe Rabbeinu. They question his authority. So this is not only what's happening at the moment, but it's also, if we have to be alone without Moshe Rabbeinu, let's see how it works. Let's see if we can produce a replacement. Let's see if our Yoshua ben Nun is appropriate. It becomes a necessary part of the story of Bnei Yisrael changing over from the counting of Bnei Yisrael, the beginning of Bamidbar, to the counting of Bnei Yisrael, to the end of the book of Bamidbar, which indicates, right, the beginning, the counting, the beginning of the Bamidbar, the Jews living the miraculous world of heaven, and the end of Bamidbar, the Jews preparing themselves to go into Eretz Canaan to make Olam Hazeh, this world, a better place. So the book of Bamidbar is a book of transition, yes, but it's also the book of which people decided that they would try. How can we live without Moshe Rabbeinu? Can we live without the miracles that we see every day coming now? So the Ramban, as we said at the beginning, did not really succeed in naming the book of Bamidbar as being a book of something. I think we could perhaps say that Bamidbar is the book of transition. It's not the book of mitzvot that we see we will see in the book of Devarim, which is a book of mitzvot, not only a book of mitzvot, but also a book of mitzvot. Mitzvot that we do today, that we continue to do because they're the mitzvot that Moshe Rabbeinu taught us. But Bamidbar is none of that, as the Ramban points out. The Ramban says there are no mitzvot, which is remarkable. So what do we need it for? What is the book there for to us? So I think that, leadership remains a problem. And understanding what is the worthy application of the talent of the Jewish people in history remains a question. It remains a question. Okay. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Well, see you next week. Oh, I might not be in next week. Check the announcements.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom.